Hi lovelies, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to do an update on my no buy year that I'm currently in at the minute. So I'm nearly halfway through my no buy. I thought it was time I shared an update, but not only that, I wanted to share with you 10 key takeaways that I found so far for how to curb that flow of consumerism, to take the frenzy out of deck buying, or to stop deck buying altogether for a while if that's what you want. I've had a few people reach out to me saying, just how are you managing it? I can't stop buying decks. And I just thought it would be really useful to share 10 top takeaways that my no buy year has taught me so far, and some of them have surprised me, so stay tuned for that. So the parameters of my no buy and just why am I doing it? Well, last year I did a depth year, which started off as a no buy and soon became a low buy, but I found within that transition, for me, consumerism is a flow, and what started out as a gentle trickle and a beautiful stream of, hey, my deck year's going really well, let's buy the odd deck. That stream soon turned into a raging river, and within those raging waters there is a tendency for just the love of tarot and the love of my decks, which is deep and passionate, to be swept away and forgotten with the chasing of the next thing. And I know that I'm not alone in this. We love our decks, we're passionate about tarot, of course we want to see what's coming next, it's all part of it, but is it controlled, and is it stealing something from you when it becomes a torrent? So for me, last year on my depth year, I did find that that flow of purchasing, that river of consumerism changed. It went from I like that to I want that to I must have that, to this frenetic feeling of 3 cards into somebody else's flip through of a deck. I was opening other tabs already in a frenzy of I must get that deck, and that's when the deck overwhelm that so many people talk about creeps in. It's not we don't love our decks anymore, but something else has taken over. I don't think overwhelm might not be quite the right word for me. It's consumerism has taken the place of passion, and I didn't want that. I shared last year I've got a bag of shame with about 15 decks in that I bought in that frenzy state at the end of my depth year that are still all unopened. That's a big sign for me that I'm buying without passion, I'm just buying with frenzy. If they're sitting unopened on the desk, that's like inviting somebody out for the first date in a passion and never talking to them, just looking for the next date. It's that sort of feeling. So that's why I started no buy. I wanted to prove to myself that I can do hard things and I can step away from that river of consumerism and calm it back down to a beautiful stream or gentle river that I can enjoy, and I can build a gentle bridge over it and cross occasionally to peruse the decks, possibly buy one and invite it back to my picnic space, rather than this torrential rapid rushing past sweeping all away. I wanted to prove to myself I could do hard things. I wanted to also prove to myself that I don't self-abandon when I set myself a challenge. And that is not just in this area of life. I'm in a year where I am trying to prove to myself I can do hard things. I can keep my word to myself. So no buy year is calming everything down. So it was going to be a complete no buy for me with a few parameters. It was no books, no clothes, no makeup, no household things, no deck, The few things I told myself could be bought were things for the garden. I'm very aware that each season of the garden, it's a growing season you'll never get back. And I knew that I was going to reopen the garden gate. I didn't want to take that joy and pleasure away from the garden. However, within garden buying, I told myself no seeds. Normally I buy a load of seeds every growing season. I've got loads of seeds from the last 2 years, so I put a no on that, which I've kept to. But I've spent probably about £20 on plants. If you watched my last gardening diary, you saw a really cheap plant haul with plants that were like £1, £1.50 in there. So I've spent probably about £20 on plants in the last 6 months, and a couple of odd bits and bobs for my Frida Kahlo wall and some trinkets for the garden. I've bought replacement things if anything breaks or really haven't got anything. My old boots last year that I bought for £4 from the charity shop were literally falling apart. I lived in them every single day for a whole year, and they were in a sorry state. And when I was decluttering the house and taking things, carfuls of stuff, to the charity shop, on one of those drop-offs I thought I really need to try and find a new pair of boots, and it was the charity shop that I'd found the last pair in. So I wandered in, and sure enough, there on the shelf, another pair of gorgeous boots, original make. They retail at about £160 and I got them for £12. So I bought a new pair of replacement boots, which again I've lived in until the weather's changed. Also gifts, I've got 3 kids, they've each had a birthday so far, so of course all the gift buying, I've bought some gifts for friends as well. So gifts are also I've bought, but apart from that there's been nothing else. And I've managed to do, I think, what I've said I wanted to do to calm that flow of consumerism, to feel more peaceful, to feel calmer. It's gone along with decluttering the house, slowing everything down and focusing on just calming my space, which had got a bit frenetic. So that's where I'm at 6 months in. Oh, and also I bought a litter picker because I pick up rubbish in the car park at the woods where I park and walk the dogs. Often the car park is overflowing with rubbish and I always pick it up, and the day that I ended up picking up a load of needles, I thought you probably need a litter picker here and some litter picking gloves. So I did buy that, and there's a little kit in the car, so that's something else I bought. So within calming down that frenzy of needing to purchase, I've had 10 takeaways that I really wanted to share with you. So if you want to attempt a no buy, an all out no buy, or if you feel like sometimes there is a little bit of that frenzy in your buying and you want to try and calm that, or if you just want to give yourself a break for a moment just to get to know the decks you've already got but you're finding you're struggling to stop buying, or if you just want to slow all the purchasing down just a bit, then these 10 takeaways might be things you've not thought of before, or they just might be interesting to listen to, or they just might give you a key in to how to stop buying decks. So number 1, put decks away. And I don't mean a purgatory box or box of decks that you think you're going to get rid of. I'm talking about those decks that you love. Say you've got 30 decks, put 20 of them out of sight. If you've got a bigger collection, put some behind cupboard doors. For me, I've used baskets, wicker baskets with lids. There are decks in there. I've used old suitcases that I've got from charity shops. There are decks in there. I've got cupboards with doors as well. Most of my collection now is out of sight, and that has been really impactful. And I think it's impactful because when all my decks are visually out in front of me on the shelves, which they used to be, my eyes flit. I get into a emotional state of flitting visually, and that flitting with our eyes, I think, feels very similar to the emotional state of wanting to purchase you're not focusing for long on one thing. You're always mentally thinking about what's next, what's coming next. It's an energetic state of chasing what's next. And that's linked, I think, very much to the energetic state that I felt that I was in when I was purchasing. So I think taking that visual clue away, it wasn't an open door to fall into that emotional state of looking quickly to the next thing. What I do now with those decks away is I curate more carefully what decks I want to work with in the following month, and I'll put those in front of me, and those fewer things in front of me help me focus on staying still, working with some decks, staying with them for a while, and then I have to make a conscious decision to move on to something else by putting those away first, and having to consciously put something away to bring something else out. It kind of has helped to keep me static in the same place, wanting to work slower with decks. It's taken away that flitting from the one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And I think the world that we live in with social media, the way it pushes us to mindlessly scroll, to constantly be finding the next site, to constantly watch the next short video. I can lose hours if I click on a shorts video, which is so scary. I think the whole makeup of this social media consumerist world is designed to destroy our attention span. Try reading a book after a week of mindlessly scrolling, and I found that within a few pages I was wanting to put the book down to go on to something else. That scared me, that my ability to read even was being taken away by this energetic state of flitting that we're being corralled into and brainwashed and moulded into. So all my decks out in front of me feels like the physical twin of mindless scrolling, and I just really found it useful to make some beautiful spaces for my decks to live that were removed from my line of sight. So put your decks away, find homes for them behind doors, so that when you do come to them you can really spend time with them and love them without that urge to move on to the next thing. Number 2 is view space as an object. Now this is something that I realised in my decluttering that has also been going hand in hand with my no-buy year. My house is very creative. It was absolutely chock full of objects and things, and I love things. I don't think I'll ever be minimalist, but that my house too was matching my mental state. It felt like there was a frenzy there. I wanted to slow it down and to calm down my actual physical space as well as my emotional mental state. So I started to declutter, and I soon learnt something really important, that space, empty space, can actually be viewed as an object in its own right, an object to be guarded and protected as much as the treasures that I own. I found that a shelf rammed with things, with all the clutter gone, the space around the precious things that were left were equally as important as the objects. And I began to view space as an object to be treasured because it has healing and joy and calmness within it. And I think that applies to our spending, that space in our spending, or the pause in our spending between acquiring things. It's to be treasured, to view that as an object as well. Within that space, we give ourselves the ability to connect with the things we're bringing in, to be grateful for the things that we have. If the flow of purchases in is never ending and non-stop, without that space built into it, then I think very soon the river becomes raging and our peace is gone. So space, whether it be physical in our environment, whether it be mental in our minds, or whether it be within a time frame as a pause, it's as important as the things we are bringing in. So view space as an object. Number 3 is understand your energetic states that trigger compulsive behaviours. And I'm using that terminology, compulsive behaviours, because for me, with my incredibly addictive personality, when I go out of control, it is compulsive. For you, it might not be quite so compulsive as with me, or it might be. So whatever way, get to know your energetic states that lead you into certain actions. So what do I mean by that? Well, at the end of my depth year last year, when I felt my purchasing had gone out of control, I had to look really carefully at myself, almost like a viewer looking in, as I was compulsively purchasing, to get that removed self to watch me in action and to say, okay, why are you now back on Amazon, or why are you now back on eBay typing in tarot decks? I had to self-check with what was going on at the time, what was my energetic state, how was I feeling. So to get in touch with your emotions, we're talking emotional literacy here. And I found that when I was purchasing, when I knew I really didn't want to purchase anymore, there were a few key emotions going on. It might be overwhelm, which was a big one for me. So when my life just gets too much and I feel that weight of having no support anywhere and there's a lot to do, that sort of overwhelm, which for me walks hand in hand with perfectionism, because if I just could lower the bar for myself a little bit more, there wouldn't be quite so much overwhelm. So overwhelm and perfectionism are really key things for me to watch out for. Also, boredom and loneliness when the kids are away and I don't feel like I've got anything to do and I'm mindlessly scrolling on the phone, which puts my energetic state into that flitting that I spoke of before. So boredom, not having a more healthy focus, is something I have to watch for. So if I'm sad about something, more than sadness, if it starts to dip its toe into hopelessness, if I have projected myself too far into the future and I'm worried about the future and I can't see ways out of certain things, so that sort of sad rumination on what ifs and what might be's, that can really lead me into mindless spending, which again I suppose is a form of emotional numbing. So being really able to take a step back and watch yourself in the behaviours to find your emotional state. Where are you actually at when you're bringing decks in? For me, it was very rarely about wanting the deck. It wasn't about the deck, it was about something within me, how I was feeling. Now, of course, there are times when I bought loads of decks and it has been about the deck, but I'm not talking about those times. I'm talking about the times when I've said I don't want to buy anymore and I've got reasons for that, and yet still I'm buying. So understanding my energetic state was a really important key to be able to have done the last 6 months, but not just stopping there, but finding other things to put into place to support myself with those energetic states. So for overwhelm and perfectionism, I've tried to be a bit more stoic. I've been reading the words of the Stoics, which is very much a movement that allows you to be human, to understand we're all just human, and just to take the emotions out of it and just allow myself to be human, which is again is keyed into my self-talk changing. I'm not as tough on myself as I used to be. I have ditched the voice of my past abusers, which I'd taken on myself. I'm now much kinder to myself with my self-talk. That has helped incredibly to stop emotional states that might lead me to spend. And basic, really basic self-care, which I'm not so good on, so things like hydrating myself, nourishing myself, moving more, getting fresh air, getting enough sleep is a key. If I find that all of those things start to slip, then shame for me creeps in, and that again leads me into the overwhelm that I can't do life, which I just numb with spending. And boredom. After 2 years of being used to not doing anything and being completely shielding in lockdown, I've started to allow myself permission to do things, to go out the house, to go back to Wales to my caravan, to go on the walk on the beach, to phone up people in a dog walking group, to find an art group where I live, to make a phone call, to reach out to somebody and email them, to say yes to lives, to connect more. That's really helping to take away the boredom that I think is, for me, deep rooted in fear and mistrust. And it makes sense to me that I would be feeling that. So that's all keyed into knowing your emotional state and putting things in place to support yourself. So I'm really trying hard with my basic self-care at the moment, and that really seems to be helping too. And number 4 kind of links with that self-care. To help me stop buying decks, I find it really helpful to be in my body more outside. It's just helped incredibly. I cannot tell you how many times I've quelled a frenzy to purchase in the last 6 months by taking the dogs to the woods for a walk. So many times. Now the garden gates open, the garden also just getting outside, or also taking a tarot deck that I already have outside too. That's been massively impactful for me. When I am in a buying frenzy state, I'm always in my head. I'm never in my body. I've never just exercised. I've never just meditated. I've left my body behind, and I'm sitting firmly in my head. So to counteract that, to get in my body more has helped incredibly. I've really upped the number of walks I'm doing. I've upped the numbers of outings. I've upped the numbers of times I'm in the garden. I've upped the number of times that I'm meditating or just sitting outside, getting outside in nature. And then I think if you can start delighting in learning about trees or leaves or plants or wildflowers, or finding a new feather, or in search of a beautiful stone, it connects you with nature more, which gets you away from the consumerist world. And it's just helped so massively for me to use nature and the wonderful world that we're given freely to get away from the world that we have to buy. There is more magic for free than we could ever buy. There is more wonder offered up naturally than all the decks that we tell ourselves in our head that we need. So that has helped massively. Number 5 is about adventure. Plan a quest. This is a giving yourself permission one. If you've been on my channel, you will have seen that me and a friend have been trying to find Sheila Nagig churches. This came about by using the Dark Goddess Tarot, and the full card in that, which is a Sheila Nagig, it opened up just a massive area of curiosity for me. So allowing yourself to have an adventure, allowing yourself to be curious about something is the best way to plan a deep dive for the decks that you already have. So plan a quest. I love that word, quest. It's an old-fashioned word which screams of an adventure over a longer period of time, which is exactly what you need when you're trying to curb spending. We need a adventure, something that excites us. It shouldn't be about telling yourself you can't. It should be about delighting in the fact that you've chosen not to. It's not FOMO, it's JOMO, joy of missing out. You only get that if you can replace it with something you're equally excited about. I've been more excited about coming up with the idea of quests than I ever was frenetically buying new decks. So find something you're really interested in. Find a deck where a card sparks curiosity and dive in deep with that. Perhaps it's a lighthouse deck. That's another one that I'm really keen to do, and you want to go and visit lighthouses. Perhaps it's a deck with a specific tree in a card and you want to go and find trees in the area that are like it and connect with the local trees. Perhaps it's a deck that's a bit dark and ghostly and you decided to take that deck to haunted sites in your area. Whatever the quest is, plan a quest with a deck. It will bring a real true excitement in, and it moves the idea of doing a deep dive with a deck away from that idea of just studious study at a desk to something that's vibrant and alive and gets you out into the fresh air, which then is that self-care again. So plan a quest, be curious, give yourself permission. Number 6 is to know your whys. So to know your whys, why do you want to stem this flow of consumerism? Why might you want to do a no buy? Why might you just want to just calm it for a little while with deck buying? Everybody's whys are going to be different, but it's important to know them, and within that to find a bigger picture. Now my whys, which I'll share with you, might not be your whys, but they've really helped me to stick to proving to myself I can do hard things. So my whys, firstly, my finances. I am a single mom with 3 children. I want to do the best for them, and I'm a carer, which doesn't pay a lot of money, so I have limited finances. The debt collection that I have was brought about by my finances in a way being freed up with 2 years of shielding and lockdown. All of a sudden I wasn't spending any money on petrol, I wasn't taking the kids out to festivals, there were no birthday parties to go to, we were all in the house shielding with Tilly, unable to do things, and my finances freed up a little bit for me, which allowed me to spend extra on decks. However, that's over now, and the cost of living has gone up hugely. Food, gas, electric, it's all skyrocketed, and all of a sudden my finances are really pinched, and I don't want to be financially in a place where things are crumbling around me. So to be in control of my finances was one of my whys. To make sure that the kids are safe and they have nice birthdays, that's all been done. To financially protect my kids and to keep a financial bubble of safety around my kids is a massive why for me. Also the environment as well. I am incredibly concerned, as we all should be, about climate issues, about the rapid rate of climate change and the way that this consumerist society is literally pushing us to disaster, to global worldwide disaster. To step away from the world of consumerism, for me, it's really interlinked massively with my desperation to do something to help for the environment. Step away from a world that always prioritises profit every time, which is killing our world. I decided to step away from decks that are put on planes to come to me, to step away from crystals that dig the earth up, to step away from the shiny new thing wrapped in plastic. I'm trying to go plastic free. I'm trying to bring my footprint and my waste down massively this year It's really important. It's difficult to do because it's not how we're used to living, but the time is now to do it. That, I think, over even financial security for me, is my big picture. So what are your whys? Know your whys. Number 7 is to find the leverage in the hard moments. So when it gets difficult on a no buy, when you've watched that latest flip through video and that frenzy has surged up in you, and hey, you haven't bought a deck for a while, I must have it, even though you've set yourself parameters that you don't want to break. How do you calm that frenzy down in those hard moments? You find the leverage in the hard moment. So what win are you going to open up to yourself by calming it down and implementing a pause, by saying no to the new deck, by just closing the tab and walking away and deep breathing in the garden? Where are your wins? For me, I found my wins where it opened up all the decks around me that I already have. Some decks I'd not even used, some decks that they were just treasures right in front of me, just that I possibly would never have found for another few years if I hadn't implemented that pause. That's the leverage in surviving the hard moments. You discover the jewels that are in front of you. Also, there is less strain on my finances every time I close a tab and walk away, every time I empty a basket on Amazon without purchasing, every time I add a deck name to a wish list rather than adding it to my buy now pile. Every time I've done that this year, the strain on my finances has lessened a little bit. So much so that when I came to do Busby's birthday in February, Tilly's birthday in March, and Poppy's birthday in May, there was money there for the presents that they wanted. There was money there to buy Poppy a big stack of books that she is just delighting in. There was money there to do the room makeover for Busby and to go and get all the paint and a new bed that he was so desperately wanting. There was money there to buy Tilly the tray of Kinder eggs that she's obsessed with. There was money there to do that. There was money there to say yes to the 3-day school trip that Busby has just gone on in Wales, an adventure holiday in Wales with all of his friends. That was nearly £200, but the money was there. That was money that wouldn't have been there if I had caved in those difficult moments. And I'm so grateful to my no buy for that. I've found the leverage into the joy of not buying there. So find the leverage of the difficult moments. It will really help. Number 8, curate your social media. I will be totally honest, at the start of the year, January, February, March, when the idea of a no buy was all shiny and new, it was so much easier. Now I've hit the halfway mark and not buying anything and saying no to all decks and saying no to all books. It does start to wear thin when you've got an absolute passion for something, even with all of these things in place. And I'm having to be more and more careful as the year goes on of what I'm watching. I'm having to curate my social media a lot more carefully. The monthly what decks I used are killers for me to watch. And don't you know, in amongst all of this, I started the tag my most unusual decks, the Cabinet of Curiosity decks. What was I thinking of making that tag? Because of course I want to watch everybody's response because it's my tag, and let's watch the responses. And there were all the curious, all the unusual, all the decks I've never seen before. It's literally been like putting myself through a walk of fire doing that tag. That's been really difficult. So I kind of self-sabotaged myself a little bit. I've made it harder, but I've survived the fire. But it might be that you take a step away from those flip throughs, from those unboxings, from the deck that you just know that if you look at it, it's going to make you want to buy it right now. And just to be careful about where you are and what your goals are. So curate your social media well. Don't start a tag that's going to make you want to buy all the decks. And number 9 is a gratitude practice. Start a gratitude practice and really focus on it. I've got lists on my phone because my memory is not so great, and if I leave it for an hour or I try and journal of an evening, I've forgotten things in the day. So I have a notes app on my phone, which I just open when something happens, and I just tap it in, or I'll snap a photograph of it. At the end of the day, I'll put a montage of the photos together. That's my gratitude photo montage with the notes list for my day. When you're focusing on what you've got already in front of you that you've got to be grateful for, I think it stops you looking beyond for something else. So develop a gratitude practice. It's been really helpful. And number 10 is the one that surprised me the most. Number 10 is become more comfortable with death, your own mortality, and the passing of time. I know, this one surprised me. I've not heard anybody else talk about this, but I caught myself a few times in the last 6 months where this frenzy of wanting to purchase has snuck up on me, where it's been triggered by being scared about aging, being scared about the passing of time, being scared about being 53 and the thoughts of my own mortality and what will happen to the kids if. A death fear of death, and not being able to face up to death, our own deaths and our inevitable demise. Those thoughts have pushed me into Amazon basket filling. Of course, I've then promptly unemptied the basket and not purchased, but I caught myself a few times being pushed to that state by those kind of thoughts. And it made me think of all these shelves full of unread books, with more books coming in, all these cupboards full of unused tarot decks, with yet more decks coming in, a way to trick ourselves about our own mortality, about how much time we've got left. I think if I really sat and looked at all my books and totted up the time for how long it's going to take me to read them all that I've already got in the house, or how much time it's actually going to take me to deep dive with all the decks I already have, or how much time it might take me to use up all the boxes of endless art supplies I've got, I think I might realise I've got enough for about 2 lifetimes. And that thought that we're staring at a bookshelf that spans our potential lifetime to our own demise is scary. And I have caught myself buying more because I don't want to face that. So I found myself watching videos about death positivity, about ways to get more open and free, to stare at what is the fate of all of us squarely in the face, and to think I'm okay with that, to kind of make plans for what I want to happen when I do eventually die, and to be okay that things are in place. I think this is the reason why when I started decluttering the house, this I've only just realised, when I started decluttering the house in January as well, and with that came like putting in place cleaning schedules as well. I looked at the Fly Lady cleaning system. I looked at another sort of housewife cleaning system, but the Swedish death cleaning system, which is about decluttering your house so that when you die there's not too much for other people to deal with. I couldn't even open the tab for that because I couldn't face the idea of decluttering my house with that in mind. Right from the start of my no-buy year, there was the clue there that this is a factor. Becoming more death positive, to look your own mortality in the face and go, yeah, I know you're there, that's fine. That has helped me to curb the torrent of purchasing. I'm as surprised as anybody, but there it is. So that's it, guys. Those are my 10 tips for how you too could stop buying decks or slow down the process of buying decks to a flow that you're happy with. If your purchasing river has turned into a tsunami, this is definitely for you. If you just feel like your picnic rug is getting washed away a few times a year, this is also for you. If you like the idea of your purchasing stream being more gentle, with a gentle bridge over it that you can wander at your own will without being in a frenzy, then this video, I hope, has been useful for you. I'd love to know any extra ways that you've found are useful to feel more at peace with your purchasing. Are there any tips or tricks that you've got I haven't mentioned? Leave them below in the comments section. Thanks guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.